good afternoon, everyone. We are going to call the Ocean Pines Association Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. My name is Laura Pangratz, and I am the chairperson. What we usually like to do at the beginning of our meeting is to introduce ourselves. So would the rest of my committee members please introduce themselves?
Bob Hilligus.
August Flengy.
Pam Ferendi.
And our other member, Keith, is excused for today. I'd like to introduce our liaison.
Steve Jacobs.
Okay. And we do have several guests here today with us. So, Jim, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Jim Tromo, association member.
Thank you.
John Latham, association member of the Marine Activities Committee.
And Jeff Ebner.
Thank you. All right.
Can you, what was your last name?
Hebner.
Ebner.
HEAVA.
Are you a association member?
Yeah, and I'm candidate for the board of
That's what I saw.
Okay. So welcome, everybody. Today is July 28th, just so you're aware, because my days tend to blur together, but it is a Friday. I do know that. Because we can do meetings hybrid fashion, in person and virtually using Teams, and this is recorded for future review. So we called our meeting to order. We have established quorum. My fellow committee members that are present here, Bob, Augie, and Pam, do you consent to having the meeting recorded?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Did our introductions. Actually, I'll update our agenda because Mr. Steve Jacobs was not originally planning on being able to be here.
True.
So I already put him on here. So
My apologies.
as excuse. So, but you were now committed to stay for the entire meeting. So just so you know.
Lucky you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's tough.
we did the introduction of guests. Now I need my committee members to approve the agenda, which is up on the screen, and also there's our unfinished business and our new business. Does anybody have anything else that we need to add? Other than which we need to find paper. Take my notes on because I apologize, I forgot to print out the agenda for us.
I'm taking notes too.
Okay, thank you. So we need to discuss the expiration of his special extension that we got him to.
My term expires 15th of October. So we need to find somebody to replace me. I'm now in the 7th year of a 6-year term. So the time has come.
Yeah.
So we need to add that to the agenda.
We will add that to our discussion. Okay, so all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our meeting, our last meeting, which was held on June 9th of 2023.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Back to the agenda. Okay. Do we have any public comments from any of our guests? This is the time that our guests are able to speak. If there's anything you want to comment on.
Good.
Jim, do you have a public comment?
Yeah, I have a comment I'd like to make. I think it fits okay in the public comments, and I'll endeavor to keep it brief. It has to do with resolutions M02 and B08. And this is procedural process type comment, not a content comment at all. Both resolutions, without going into details, ended the most recent board meeting without there being any kind of a final action on the resolution. In fact, B08 was at second reading, and it was tabled in particular because of the election would result in 3 new members of the board. And it was considered desirable not to act on the board, not to act on the resolution with an outgoing board. This has happened a couple of times in the past, 2 or 3 times. I haven't tried to dig up the exact examples. And the first and second reading process originated with B01 in 2009. So it's been there for about 14 years. We've had 2, 3, whatever situations of incomplete action on a resolution action prior to the annual meeting and a new board. The way it's been, excuse me, handled in the past informally is that the action on the resolutions begin again at a first reading after the new board is seated. And in fact, that was pretty much the way the recently approved B03 was handled, because B03 did not get completely acted on it prior to the meeting, annual meeting a year ago. So my suggestion, this is a suggestion to the committee that that the board be recommended to the board that that's the process that takes place with both M02 and B08, that we don't go into the next board with them both at a second reading status, at which time it can be approved with or without amendments of the draft as it stands at that time. The reasoning behind that is to put it in a position where all members of the board start at the same point in the process of considering the resolution. And adding to that, it's going to be approximately 2 months at least before the board would consider either one of them to begin with. And briefly, my second suggestion to the committee, considering this in a documented manner has been kind of brushed aside, if I can put it that way. It has happened a couple, 3, 4 times maybe now in the 14 years of the first and second reading process. Well, maybe it's about time that, however this is considered to be considered, without suggesting again how to consider it, that the B01 pick up a provision indicating what to do with a resolution that's still pending in some manner, going from one board to the next. That situation. That's the extent of my comment.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank-
All very valid. Yep. So we will have that documented in our minutes. Is there any further public comments? All right, we will close the floor to public comments. At this point, well, we'll take that from it. The next update on the agenda is the chairperson's report that I like to give. So here is my update. I virtually attended on Teams the directors meeting that was held on July 15th, which unfortunately that particular meeting did not get recorded or was not able to be successfully recorded. So you can't rewatch it or anything. I was on call for my other volunteer position, so I was not able to attend in person. So I did virtually attend that particular one. I did email Michelle Ross from the Ocean Pines admin office to add our agenda for this meeting to the website. And then after today's meeting, I will send her our approved minutes from the June 9th meeting to be added to the website. And then we should be all caught up once this video then is posted. Okay. At this point, I will give the floor to our board liaison. Steve, if you have anything you would like to add, report?
Well, I think most, if not all of that would be caught up in the new business. So I'm not, I like Jim's comment that he made. Frankly, it would have been my intent, assuming the committee had no objection, to proceed in the way that he suggested on the two pending resolutions. But other than that, I want to go back and look to see whether or not it's worthwhile to do something with B01 to make it clear that's the way to proceed. But that's other than that, I mean, we can deal with the rest of the stuff in new business.
Perfect, thank you. All right, at this time, I will suspend Robert's Rules of Order so that any of our guests may ask questions or comment as we go forward until if there's anything that we as a committee need to vote on, then we will reinstate them. Okay, so under unfinished business, which we're going to table because Keith, who is the one working on that one, he's not here, so I had left that on our agenda. So we will move on to new business. I was not exactly sure on how we wanted to put these things on. These were topics that we have talked about that might need some more discussion. So 06 up there, which is the elections and referendums. These were the amendments. Augie, you're gonna have to help me refresh my memory here.
Say that.
For M06, what is our further discussion that we need to have on it? Because we included CO4 for the edits for the recount. I think there was still some issue on how, if there needed to be a recount, how that would occur.
This is the one we're holding for next year though, right?
Okay, so is that the one we want to table until after this cycle is completed then?
Well,
Or is there
the
anything
way,
we need to address now?
if I may, the way the board passed the amendments that were proffered by the elections committee dealing with the recount, with the acknowledgement that I think this is correct, that the current president, the liaison to the elections committee, who is likely to become the new president, and myself, who's liaison to this committee, all agreed that the time is ripe for a pretty complete review to M06, which I think now are 4 attachments, A, B, C, and D, as I recall, and to make sure that that the M06 and the attachments are A, consistent with the bylaws, and B, if there's any policy changes, that there be sufficient time for the board to engage in that prior to the next election. For reasons that are not critical at this point, but the history in the past year is we were always sort of racing uphill to get everything done for any number of reasons. So that's sort of where we are. If I could make a suggestion to the committee, it would be to at least begin work on drafting changes to N06 and the attachments if necessary, and to find any inconsistencies that exist between M06, the attachments and the bylaws, so we get everything back. I remember Jim at several times has
Right.
identified some deadline dates that were identified that were incorrect. We need to get all that sort of squared away once and for all. And I'm sure there's others as well. I don't claim to have reviewed all this in detail. But that would be my suggestion. And I would add, the elections committee is supposed to undertake the same function. I don't, obviously they're not gonna do it now because they're busy doing a lot of other things, but I think I have this right. I suggested, without consulting with anybody here, that the bylaws committee was prepared to work with the elections committee, set up subcommittee with members from both, or operate separately and then combine the work products of the two, however they want to do it. But my view, and I think the other board members who were involved in this agree, is that this is something that should get done in the first couple of months of the next board.
Prior to the beginning of the next cycle.
Right. I mean, the election is going to take place. There'll be an organizational meeting in August. First board meeting will be in September. I would think that the two committees should have documents ready to run October, November board meeting. That would be my suggestion. But I can't speak for the elections committee. I don't know what the board ultimately will decide to do. But for this committee, I think it would be worthwhile to, get your ducks in a row and be ready to rock and roll. So.
Okay. All right.
I just have a question. What happened to the recount from last year?
I don't
From
believe
the
there
2022 election,
Yes.
there was I'm not sure it qualified as a recount. It's a technical matter, but they did re-examine all the ballots. There was a new vote total that was put out for the 6 candidates that ran. But the changed numbers did not affect the election results. And so the upshot out of that is the 2022 election had already been certified.
Right.
There was no change based upon the second count. And so that's pretty much it.
Because I think that's also part of the discussion here is that if a candidate has a certain amount of time and place where they can request a recount, that wasn't, done within that time period. So what Steve is saying happened, in my mind, doesn't actually fit our definition of recount
Okay.
per se. It, as he said, it was re-looked at, but because we had already had the end meeting, everything was certified, it didn't have a glaring change in the results. It's not an official recount that way, because the process in this, in these, resolutions and, all that, state the process that a candidate has to follow in order for them to be able to demand a recount.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I get it.
For themselves. Yeah.
Thank you. For
All right, so, I do have, let's see, I gotta find my, notes.
Or I'd like to make a comment if I may.
Oh, sure, yes, Jim.
Okay, I want to clearly recognize I'm not a member of the committee anymore. And that goes with my comment. Talking about a draft to the board, if I understood Steve correctly, in the October, November timeframe, I think is extremely optimistic. Secondly, I think that needs to be recognized that in particular, attachment A, and this goes throughout the entire rest of the draft, or not the draft, the resolution, is written as if the it's all done locally. It's done by, the mailing is done by a local contractor. That's the way attachment A in particular reads, and that's carried throughout that will carry throughout the resolution. Now, the most recent revision did add in there a Band-Aid about remote contractor performance. But that's nothing more than a Band-Aid in a particular subparagraph of attachment A. The M06 needs to be organized so that it is clear what is required of the association and of contractors, regardless of what method is used to conduct the election, whether it's mail ballot only, whether it's a hybrid, or maybe someday in the future, which I don't expect to be around, it would be only internet voting. You've got to be able to pick out of that resolution exactly what you expect of the contractor and what the contractor is going to write their proposal around. My additional comment is I have always been very reluctant with a combined effort on a resolution in which the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee is part and parcel of drafting the end result to be considered by the board. The Bylaws and Resolutions Committee is not the action entity. In this particular case, the action entity is the Elections Committee. They're the ones that have to carry out what's in there, and they're the ones that know or should know what is required to get the job done and have gone through what has to be done. Now, if there are specific things that can be identified that the Elections Committee wants some kind of input from this committee about, fine. Now, that doesn't mean that this committee can't go through the existing M06 and highlight areas in the existing M06 that may need attention or do need attention. I fully agree with that, and provide that information to the Elections Committee. But again, this is a personal opinion. I'm always been very reluctant to tie this committee in with the drafting of a resolution in which the committee is not the actor. And we are really the actor. Excuse me for my reference to we. This committee is not really an actor on anything other than B01, which is the mother of our book of resolutions. At any rate, that's enough of my comments, except for I apologize for the telephone ringing in the background. Once again, I forgot to disconnect my outside line before the meeting started. I was disconnected.
Can I just summarize it so I know what he said? Basically, he said the Elections Committee and the Bylaws Committee should not meet together from M06.
He didn't say that.
Okay, what did he say?
What he said was this committee should not write the resolution. It should be written by the committee. We can help the committee. We can assist the committee. We can point out things in here that are inconsistent with the bylaws or other parts of the resolution so we get consistency.
Okay.
But if you read our own section, the attachment to it, it clearly defines that this committee is not to be writing and getting involved until it gets to the first reading.
Okay.
And that was approved by the board. And the reason for that is if you're going to be objective and look at it, if you wrote it, it's kind of hard to stand there and be objective in saying it's incorrect. So you want to assist, but not write it.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Jim?
That's essentially correct. I'll be a little bit more straightforward in my comment. As I recall, the comments by the president, Doug Parks, that the two committees should get together and come up with M06. And if I'm misstating that, okay, somebody point it out to me and I'll correct myself. But I do not agree with that for the reasons I stated. We're not I'm sorry, this committee is not the acting committee. We should be the reviewing committee. Now, again, to restate it, another point, yeah, if there are questions and desires for input or clarifications or whatever, that's fine. But I think Bob stated very correctly that we don't want to be going to a first reading in partnership with someone else.
Jim, thanks for that comment. Look, I'm probably guilty sometimes of shorthanding, what I'm suggesting. My thought, and as I raised this with the board when this subject came up, was my interest, frankly, was just looking for as efficient a means as possible to address for lack of a better term, myriad of issues that M06 and the attachments present for future consideration. And I've been around this committee enough to know that it doesn't have any problem, frankly, in sitting down and spending several hours going through what needs to be gone through. Not to insult or belittle the work of any other committee, but the other committees that I have observed tend not to do that. They operate in a different fashion, which is fine. But I don't disagree with what Jim is saying. It might be worthwhile maybe for this committee to go through M06 and the attachments, find areas that need attention by the elections committee, and provide a synopsis of why these different provisions need the attention. Jim's example of whether the contractor is local or not local, what changes have to be done to make that provision neutral in the way it's addressed, depending, so we don't have to worry about the difference between a local or non-local contractor. Those sort of considerations. So I don't, that's fine. But as I pointed out, my interest, having, this is now the third election that I've been here for, that I'm aware of, that problems have come up. And it just seems to me, we don't want to run the risk of going into a fourth one like that. So my statements before were in the interest of efficiency. Jim is correct in the way he characterizes the duties assigned, and the committee will have to work within those parameters. That's as far as I would go.
I don't think it would be stepping out of our line if we, after the annual meeting in August, if we said to the elections committee and suggested, hey, because they have regular terms like we do, right? Search was the only one that was supposed to only be like 1-year terms, correct? If I remember right. But I believe elections committees, basically if they're going to be a turnover again, that like happened last year or not, but if not, then maybe we should, encourage them to, look at these things prior to, or find out if they're going to look at them. I don't know. To keep, I feel like sometimes we need to encourage to stay on a productive timeline, so that we're not going, oh, guess what? It's now January, February, and we're supposed to start the next election cycle in March, and we haven't done anything on any of this. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it would be stepping out of our lane to do that.
The election
did you have
committee,
a comment?
the election committee is a standing committee.
Correct.
It's not one that reorganizes each year, so they have the
Should
knowledge and the
have-
background.
Right.
And I think if we clearly define the areas like Steve said, Well, it should be transparent. It doesn't matter whether it's an outside source or local that's gonna deal with it. It should work either way. So if you want a local one next year, you can pick a local one without rewriting it. Or you can use
We
a
don't have to
distance.
keep rewriting
The
everything.
thing is, you want to maintain the integrity, but you also want to be clear that the definitions in there are consistent with every other resolution and the bylaws. And with dates change and things are not consistent, that's where you can get in trouble. And, I agree with helping, but I disagree with really rewriting until it's given to us as a first reading. Then we need to really look at it and say, this is wrong, or this is right, or yes, we agree with it.
Right.
But, if you get involved in the weeds, it's kind of hard to sort it back out and say that
Right.
it's not the same.
I mean, my only comment is this is
Go
sufficiently
ahead.
complicated and sort of so close to the rules and bylaws that it seems like providing them some technical assistance as they're
Yeah.
drafted. They got drafted, but providing them
Right, yeah,
technical
we
assistance
give them-
seems-
We can certainly help. I mean, the committee
Can
can
they have
certainly
someone
help.
who's taking this on?
So that they don't spend their energy writing something that doesn't match some of those key points. And then we have to go back and redo it again.
Somebody has to drive it so it doesn't fall behind.
Yeah.
Or you'll wind up just like we did this year with last year's not being resolved. We can't afford to let it go another year without giving the board what they need so they can approve it. And we have a bylaw or a resolution that's consistent and matches everything.
Yeah,
And that's,
I think that should be the goal.
Yeah. But there's-
As a mechanical means, how it gets done, but again, going back in part to what Jim said, the idea where we have to, scotch tape things together just to make it work is not a good way to operate. I mean, we should make sure, not to say there wouldn't have to be some technical or conforming changes as we go along, but everyone should be able to read and understand the basic outline. And without prejudging any of this, because I don't know what the committee is going to do in terms of the search committee resolution, it may be that the elections committee is going to take on some additional responsibilities as well. I mean, not knowing how that plays out, but I'm just saying they've got a fair workload. We can provide them with enough outline and notes to get started. I would hope the committee would undertake that function. But that's where we are.
All right, thank you.
So what did we resolve?
That this is, tabled for now
Okay,
because, we need to work, the election, we need, this current election cycle needs to be completed. And then the elections committee needs to start the work. We can, start working behind the scenes, maybe on drafting up some, helpful hints to them on what they should focus on, but, we're not going to do the work for them until it's gone through like the first reading, and then it's brought back to us to just confirm and make sure that everything matches.
so based on your thought, there has to be a driver. Do we have a driver?
That is up to the chairperson, I believe.
it's basically the chairperson
Okay.
working with the chairperson of the election committee. That's where the driving
Okay.
force should.
So you're gonna follow up.
Pardon me?
So you're gonna follow up.
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
I just want to be clear in my head.
Gotcha. No problem. So next, item on the agenda is it was brought to my attention from Key, which, he, noticed that in our summer Ocean Pines newsletter magazine, that went out, there was an article titled "Be a Good and Respectful Neighbor," written by Linda Martin, wherein she quotes the ARC guidelines on yard sales and the current documented limit for 4 per year. In that article, she also goes to claim that this includes items that members post for sale online where the person purchasing visits the property to see it. Keith believes and wanted us to bring it up for discussion, but this is a bit of a stretch, and taking it out of context. Now, However, if this is an approved policy, we need to consider its inclusion in writing. If not, then the Ocean Pines employees, are sharing their interpretations of what is written, and maybe that's not quite as accurate. So let me go back over here because I did pull up. Here is the actual article that was written. See if I can make that a little bit bigger. Whereas she states, everywhere you look on the weekends, there are yard sales, especially during the summer months. The compliance permits and inspections CPI department receives several complaints regarding yard sales, mostly about the congestion of traffic on a particular street or the numerous yard sales certain neighbors having even during the week. As a reminder, per section 600.3. Of the guideline, signs for yard or garage sales shall be limited for use only on Saturdays and Sundays during the hours of 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is the responsibility of the person or persons that place any signs for yard sales to remove all signs by 5 p.m. on the last permitted sale date. Yard sales are limited to a total of 4 per year per developed lot. This includes the popular. Now, this is where the part in question.
This is the question.
That she includes the popular marketplace that people use to sell items. If you have items in your yard that you are listing online with potential buyers visiting your property to look at the items, then that is a yard sale that counts towards the 4 allowed per year. And then she comments, be a good and respectful neighbor and obey the guidelines. And then she gives the contact info to report any other violations and all of that to the info at Ocean Pines team. Now, I don't know if I pulled up. I gotta find it. Hold on.
You're looking for the
Yeah,
reference that he's making to the bylaws. I mean, to the section 603I.
The yard guideline.
It's, the bottom line is, the first part of it is 100% accurate, the way it's published. The second part is maybe somebody misunderstood what you're saying, but no place does it define that any of the marketplace, it doesn't even address that issue. And how can that count toward it? Now, if the CPI really wants that to be there, then they need to change the regulations and get board approval for it so it's there and consistent. Otherwise, it's not. It's an opinion and not a fact. So, and I don't think it was done intentionally. I think there's a lot of pressure on people complaining on yard sales that don't believe in yard sales, don't like yard sales, and saying there's too much
I know
traffic.
They're saying the items are sitting in the yard
Yeah,
and they're advertised on
Yeah.
whatever website.
yeah, pick up free. Does that count as a
Right,
yard sale?
Yeah, that's what she's saying is
Yeah.
like if I porch
Right.
pickup, and I think that's a little bit of a stretch there, for all of those. I mean, if I had a bookcase that I was giving away to somebody, who would, but you need to come and look at it first, that's gonna count as a yard sale. And so then I can't have an actual yard sale, I've already had 4 this year, but, which I could probably do.
What is our role in this?
So,
The bottom line is, I think we need to get back to CPI to ask them if it's something they want to incorporate. And if so, prepare it for the board to approve.
Yeah,
I mean, it's that simple.
yeah, I would think this is go back to Jim's comment about the function of this committee. Yeah, I would think this is something that should go to ARC, and ARC needs to address this, because they meet, I want to say at least monthly, maybe more frequent, but at least monthly, with CPI staff about matters like this. Look, this is just me, but on a Saturday or even a Sunday, you go down Ocean Parkway, you know, it's tough because people park everywhere because there's always yard sales going on. And I'm not even talking about the various side streets that run off Ocean Parkway.
Well, it's also summer, and so there's more visitors.
Absolutely, right. I mean, there's more traffic generally, and the summer's the best time to do a yard sale.
Right,
I
you
mean,
don't
all
do it in
that is
the
true.
winter.
But it does add to the congestion, and I don't know exactly what Linda's getting at, but it would seem to me that if the idea is, well, we got to find a way to both allow for the yard sales to take place, and we want to try to find a way to get a little bit of our hands around some of the traffic congestion that takes place around these things, then this marketplace issue would need to be addressed, because otherwise people could
And it's clearly.
use the right to 4
the art-
yard sales per year. So
Right.
It's a,
Yeah.
So-
What's listed in the current park guidelines under signage, and this is, the yard, garage, rummage, et cetera, sale signs. Signs for yard or garage, sales shall be limited for use on Saturdays and Sundays. She quoted all of that. May not be attached to trees, road signs, or any permanent structure. Signs are prohibited on the Route 589 side of Northgate Bridge. At the South Gate, signs are limited to placement at the intersection of Manklin Creek Road and Ocean Parkway. No signs are permitted on Cathell Road. It is the responsibility of the person or persons that place those signs to remove them by 5 p.m. on the last permitted sale date. Yard sales are limited to a total of 4 per year per developed lot. There is no mention of marketplace on there.
No, that's a
Well,
fact.
marketplace is new too. It's a new,
Well,
relatively.
Facebook and Marketplace has been around for a while, you know, but it's not even commented on in here.
it's more,
So when someone hears the words yard sale or rummage sale or estate sale, it's at a house and there's lots of items, you
it's
know?
more about what.
It does not indicate that that would also apply to, hey, I went through all my clothes and, you know, I have way too many and I'm gonna give them free, but if you wanna come pick them up off my porch, that should not count
Well, that's not a sale.
as, right. Well,
Well,
I think we're talking about
free, but
selling.
right.
So the question is, you put something on Marketplace, say, I have a bunch of stuff in my yard. If you want one of the items, bang on my door and I'll tell you how much it costs. That sounds like a yard sale.
The point I was making earlier was that particular rule or bylaw was written before Marketplace and Facebook were very active. Because I've been here since 1991. It's only been within the last maybe 5 or 10 years that those things
So,
are.
but then the comment is Ocean Pines themselves, the administration and office are interjecting something that's not been updated then the guidelines need to be.
But
It
wait a
has
minute.
anything to do with Marketplace. It has to do with whether people are putting stuff in their yard
Right,
for sale.
right.
It doesn't matter if it's on Marketplace or not on Marketplace. The line is, what counts as a yard sale? It's a car in your
Right.
driveway with a for sale sign, a yard sale? Probably not. Is putting a bunch of random items in your yard without a sign? Probably.
Has this been brought to John Viola's attention? I'm not quite sure. It's his staff that made the mistake at this point.
hold on.
Well, we
Let-
can
let me-
call
let
it a
me-
total
wait,
mistake
hold
because.
on. I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
The issue is not, in my opinion, the issue is not whether staff made a mistake or anything like that.
Right.
The issue is that this is something that ARC needs to address.
Correct.
And they may choose to address it, they may choose not to, they may feel language there is sufficient. The first thought that popped into my mind was when they say, no signs are permitted on Cathell Road. Someone's put up these, duck and goose
Yeah.
crossing signs. Now, I understand the subject matter is yard, garage, etc., sale signs. Clearly, that's not a sale sign. I get that.
Right.
But the sentence reads, no signs on Cathell Road. So my point is simply, rather than trying to decide, and I don't think we should, I think that would be incorrect,
Right.
to assign, someone made a mistake and they're on the staff. the issue is, this is something that ARC needs to be called to their attention. They need to address this.
As chairperson, what, would the next step be then for me to reach out to the chairperson of the art committee
Your
and say,
chairperson would go to the art committee and after
this, we
it's
had a
inconsistent.
question about this,
Yeah.
this was brought to our attention. And,
And if I may, my request would be that when you send that off, as an email, obviously, CC me as liaison to this committee and whoever is the board liaison to ARC, who
Mhm.
I believe right now is Colette, will be leaving.
Right.
But, I think in fairness, any communication between this
correct.
Laura
Go to that.
as committee chair and any other committee chair should also CC the appropriate liaisons.
Right.
But that's sort of where this needs to be addressed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't consider it somebody overstepping authority or anything else. It's something that is not consistent with the bylaws and resolution, and it needs to be addressed.
Right. We can't, it should not be recommended that verbiage like those words, marketplace and all that, should be interjected into a reminder about the rules for yard sale unless it's been updated in the guidelines.
It's the
It becomes subjective. That's really the issue in the sense
Yeah.
that who's determining, was
Well-
that a marketplace sale or a yard sale or just a whatever?
Well,
you
for
know?
argument's sake, although I think Augie's right, if this is not a sale, but there's at least one, maybe, and I'm trying to remember if I've seen more, but there's one of these little libraries on Ocean Parkway. Now, that's not a sale, but it's there and people can stop.
Drop
grab
it and
one,
pick
pick
one
one
up.
up, drop it up, that sort of stuff. And if the concern is, how do we balance traffic with yard sales and everything else? That's probably part of the subject matter as well. I mean, and that's what you want to get to.
Stop for the yard sale.
So, I'll draft up
Draft something
something that I can send to the art committee. I will CC it to both liaisons. And even though, Colette is, gonna be leaving soon, if I send it now, she's still technically there. And then she can forward it to the new liaison once they know who that is. Or we can remind them.
Yeah, that might be,
You might
It's the
wanna
more
remind
likely
them.
of the two.
I think that might be a more efficient way to go.
Okay.
So next item, I mean, I appreciate Keith bringing this to.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's the
Asking
kind
the
of-
question because
Well-
I hadn't read the article when he sent me that email at that point.
What this could do is cause more neighbors to be calling over something that isn't a policy until it becomes one.
Right.
So you don't want to generate more activity than you need. They already have enough problems.
Can I ask a question, you guys? I know.
Sure.
We suspend Robert's rules, right?
Yeah.
How do you know whether someone has 4, 8, or 12? It's not tracked, right? You don't have to apply
I
for it.
don't believe so, no.
No.
Okay, and so it's
It's
only
a
kind of
good
the honor.
faith, honor,
Yeah,
a
okay,
good
okay, I
faith
just want to make sure. It's-
Yeah, you don't have,
I-
my understanding is not in here and I've not seen anything where they say you must send an email saying
I
you're
didn't think so, but I was just interesting.
It hasn't come up
See
at
that
any,
as a-
Jim, has it ever come up at any of the meetings? It's the first time, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, I've been here 7 years and Jim's been here 14 or 15. And I don't think either of us ever heard of it before. So it's something that, let's get in front of it before it becomes a problem. That's all.
My recollection, going back to, maybe Jim was one who said, I don't really, someone said early on, as I recall, that things like whether you have 4 or 8 or however many yard sales in a year, we have neighbors, and if something has gone wrong, you can expect a complaint.
Right, right.
Okay, so that's sort of the social
Yeah.
Yeah.
method of enforcement.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
got
I think that's the only thing you really
I
need
got
to
you.
worry about.
That's why I
Yeah.
got to assume that that's how.
Yeah.
No.
How a complaint could.
And that the complaints will draw the attention, and that's what you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right. let's go back to the agenda. I cannot remember, but Steve.
Yeah.
I believe we had the update, then for M07 and the convenience fee one.
Right, trying to remember where we left off. Short answer is that, I, had a quick sit down with Monica Rakowski, who is the liaison with the Budget and Finance Committee. And I explained to her the problem, that basically this thing is floating in the ether. It's in the book of resolutions. It is not appropriately drafted. It's not even clear to us whether this is meant to be a policy or an operational question. And she agreed with all of that. And we both agreed that it's up to Budget and Finance to determine this and probably to speak to John Viola and whoever else he feels is necessary to address this matter. At the July board meeting, Monica did serve notice in her comments as treasurer that this matter will be before the Budget and Finance Committee. Now, it may take them a little bit of time to get squared away with John one way or the other, but to determine whether this is policy or operations, and if it is policy, either they would draft it or they, I guess, might ask for our assistance. I don't know, but somehow to get it addressed so it's in the appropriately numbered and filed in the book of resolutions. And that's sort of where we are. So we're waiting to hear from Budget and Finance.
Hey. Yeah,
Well, may I make a comment?
yeah, wasn't M07 an old one, Jim? That was,
So I
okay.
didn't understand, Bob, I didn't understand what you said. Bob, I didn't understand what you said.
Oh, okay. M07, first of all, it appeared in the book of resolutions without a number.
Right.
And it was given a number of M07, but I think, I don't know who assigned a number for sure. I think it was Keith, just so we'd
That's
have a
for the
reference.
convenience. That was the convenience one.
Yeah,
That- But
convenience
it was
fee.
not, that's not M07. That was the F0.
Three, 005.
Yeah, it was an F0,
Yeah,
okay.
it was an F1. And he just took the next number, because
Right.
remember, you and I happened to look at the book of resolutions with Linda, and there was a former F05. So
Right.
we were saying we should probably pick a different number.
Correct.
In case that one ever got reinstated, then you don't have to create a new number.
So
Or, you
what
know,
is M07?
the
Is it not-
M07 one, Steve, the
Which one?
update you sent me on that was to review the above entitled resolution to determine if it meets our current policy and requirements.
Oh,
The board received a charging document at the May 2023 board meeting. This email is to inform our
Is that the one?
committee that the board considers this resolution and will not be taking any action regarding.
Bulkhead and waterway.
oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was focused only on the convenience fee, right. And this is, I think, the second email I have sent you that says essentially the same thing.
Yeah,
Basically, what it came down to was in order to complete the work in the governance document,
we need.
we brought, but at the request of the committee, I brought a notice up to the board saying, this is up, it's board's responsibility to review this. You're supposed to review it. You know, what do you want to do? The decision was that an email back to this committee saying, board has reviewed it. They're not going to take any further action. You can update your governance document. That's really what it's meant to say.
Right, okay, so that way, we can get Keith to update it and say, they've looked at it, they don't
Yeah,
want to.
and we did this with
Right.
one or two others. I can't remember which ones.
Yeah.
I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. We had some discussion about that as well. But basically, the board's not going to do anything more. So if you want to update the governance document, set it out for 2 more years before it has to be reviewed again, go ahead and do it. I mean, because the board's not going to do anything.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Jim had a comment.
Oh, Jim, okay, sorry. Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, this is on the convenience fee issue and Steve's remarks kind of, I would say kind of, they do lead to the possibility of budget and finance drafting an F-type resolution for a first reading by the board. And I do not think that that's the right direction to go. The book of resolutions is not intended for that kind of thing. If you look at the resolutions individually, they are going to they go to the governance of the association. They basically refer to something in the governing documents, either directly or indirectly, that has to be accomplished. Now, paying the annual charge is in fact an annual a governing documents issue, but how it's paid is not a governing documents issue. And I don't feel that an F resolution for this convenience fee renegade resolution that's currently in the book of resolutions is the proper way to go. You know, put this in one of these financial manuals. Most recently, one of them was supposedly updated. I don't think you're going to find it anywhere published, but that's where that kind of thing belongs, and then also belongs in the information when you get your invoice as to how you can pay it. I just do not agree any direction of this issue going toward should go toward an F-type resolution or a resolution in the book of resolutions. That's not the place for that kind of thing.
If I may, Jim, when the committee asked me to raise this with the board initially, this goes back 4, maybe 5 months ago, maybe even a little bit more. When the board considered it, there was at least some debate as to whether this was in fact, a policy matter or an operations matter. I actually I didn't bring it with me, but I did. I was provided with some emails back and forth about this matter. And the problem with the convenience fee is that, and by the way, you're probably right. It probably is not a policy matter, but I will say that the convenience fee issue sort of came down to, well, this is what the credit card companies do. And the statement as written for Ocean Pines is that there's no cap on the convenience fee. So if you go to pay your assessment, which is $700, $800, $900, maybe more dollars a year, and you put it on your credit card, your convenience fee comes up to a fair piece of cash when you use the convenience of the credit card. And so the onus is on, because the credit card companies will not honor that. The onus, frankly, is on Ocean Pines to address this. And that's sort of where we are. Oddly enough, not to get too deep into the weeds here, the person who raised the issue of the convenience fee and its impact on his credit card bill was one of the members of the board who wrote and passed the piece that we're talking about. So, I mean, it's like, so anyway, and they're a couple of years apart. So not to say whether I agree or disagree with you, I think you're probably right, but the issue that came up at our board meeting was some debate as to whether this was in fact policy or operations, and there was no real answer. So the issue was sort of booted around a little bit. I think the committee asked that, we pursue this with budget and finance. I think Laura sent a note to budget and finance, and Monica and I sat down and talked about it. And so that's our status right now. I mean, as the status report, that's where we are right now.
I guess I'll leave it at, I certainly discourage budget and finance from writing an F resolution. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, that fine. Yeah.
So to clarify, do I need to re-email budget and finance and?
I
just
don't think
say-
so. I mean, as I say, Monica said at the July
They were
board
taking
meeting
care of, right.
that she was gonna raise this with budget and finance.
We should wait and
And
hear from them.
she did not proffer any suggestion one way or the other as to whether this in fact was policy or operations. It's basically, she said, committee has to make a recommendation regarding this, and that's where we are.
Okay.
And it was FO5 that I was confused with.
Right.
And FO5 is the one that was previously used
There
for
was a
resolution that was
previous
canceled. So
F05, yes,
if somebody
Which, if it
decides to
does
rewrite it, give it
become-
a new number.
right. If it does need to become an actual resolution.
Yeah.
Now knowing that there
Yeah.
was an original one, we
But
should pick a different number.
Right,
after
yeah.
that. In case that one ever gets reinstated at some point, somebody looks at the history and goes, we should bring that one back. It's already got its number.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that. Did you, refresh my memory again, please, Steve, did you want to discuss, B08 yet on board ethics? Is that the one that Colette was putting forward?
Right.
Correct. So-
Colette brought this up as a second
Right.
reading.
Yes.
First reading, I think it was actually. And
July.
And then it was
at the
tabled.
July board meeting, Doug indicated that it was his feeling the matter should be tabled. Ultimately, that's what the committee did. I'm sorry, that's what the board did.
Right.
In deference to the fact that we will have 3 new board members in just a few weeks. So that's sort of where we are at this point.
So we'll keep that.
I mean, B08, and probably Bob and Jim can give you a better history on this than I can, but if there was a B08 addressing ethics, it ultimately was repealed. It was, I will tell you that my recollection is shortly after I got on the board, Doug raised the issue with me in an email about bringing an ethics package back. We sort of got lost in the shuffle a little bit, but ultimately, that's sort of where we are. And I don't know, it's hard to know exactly whether or not this will meet with the approval of the board in its current form, but that's sort of where we are at this point.
Okay. All right. So next up on the agenda then is the governance document. Bob, you have, previous history with it. Can you tell by looking at it, without Keith here, is there anything that needs to be put on our agenda for our next meeting?
Let's see. Fucking 22nd. Yeah, most of them. No, I can't see any that need to be added that aren't already there. March 24 now.
Laura, if I can make a brief comment.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to revisit my comments on M02 and B08. However, if the board continues on with those both to a second reading initially, with the startup of the board at regular meetings, you're not going to have an opportunity to make comments on either resolution before the board can actually act on. I'm just observing that. I'm not saying you should be sitting here and considering the content of both now. I'm just looking to the future. If for some reason the board says, we're just gonna go to second reading on both at our next regular business meeting, you're not gonna have an opportunity to comment on, because you're not gonna know about it until the agenda comes out, which will probably be the last minute or past the last minute for the committee to commit to consider comments. That's all.
Yeah, Jim, I think you're right. M02 is the amenity rules sort of discussion in shorthand.
That's right.
And staff has prepared a manual, and so my recollection is, yeah, we did the first reading on M02 at the July meeting. So both are in the same boat.
They all go back to first readings, right?
Yeah, I mean, someone, not quite sure who, but someone would have to bring those back up at some date for the new board as a first reading. I mean, I'd be willing to undertake that function. And I don't know that I even need the committee's approval for doing that. Maybe I do.
Yeah.
But it's definitely both are, how would I put this, sort of unofficial pending business. That's the best way I would describe it. But they're both, if we're going to take them up, we would take them up as first readings. That's correct. You have B03, is that even passed?
Pardon me?
B03.
B0.
Steve, you mentioned a manual. The second reading motion page that was before the board at its last meeting indicated that the board had approved rules and a manual. I can't find any evidence of that.
I think that's correct because it was done by staff, and so it was viewed. Hold on.
Well, there's no evidence since the first of the year of the board considering any rules for the amenities. You know, I welcome anyone to go back and look through the agendas and the minutes, and of course the minutes of the last meeting are not published yet, but at one point in time, perhaps informally within this committee, there was a package of rules circulated, and I made comments.
Yeah.
I see no evidence of the board having acted on approving the rules as is stated in the motion that was before the board at the last meeting.
What transpired? I have in front of me, for like a first reading from Doug on recommended changes to M02. And it references in the background, GM was tasked with creating an operational manual listing the rules and regulations of the use of various amenities within Ocean Pines. The task was completed and the manual was approved by the board. Follow-up requirements are to have the resolution update to be consistent with the rules and regulations stated in the manual. And so the original package, which I think this committee spent a lot of time on relating to M02, was an attempt to ensure that we operated within the provisions of the Homeowners Association Act that was amended now, I want to say 2 years ago, by the legislature. The draft that this committee worked on M02, which sort of tracked a little bit of what was done by the ARC committee with M01, dealing with hearings and appeals and whatnot, was changed to some degree in light of the manual that the staff prepared. But there's still no, M02 should be constructed. I think that, don't hold me to this, but I think the intent was M02 was to be constructed to lay out a procedure for someone who violated any of the amenity rules in the manual, be able to have a hearing to determine what the long-term or even permanent punishment might be for those violations, to make it consistent with the change in the statute that the legislature passed. And that came up as a first reading at the July meeting, but I'm agreeing with you from your earlier public comments that that is an appropriate resolution for board consideration going forward as a first reading.
Okay, I'm not, I could comment on the content of the M02, but I'm not going to. That's premature, I think. My point is limited to when in what you just read, it said the board has approved the rules. And that's not the case.
The board approved a manual that was developed by staff.
Okay, manual of rules, I believe, is what that's supposed to mean. But what does the board approve? What manual has the board approved? When did it approve it? That's related to M02.
I am guessing we approved the manual either at the May or June board meeting. Hold on. I don't see a date on this. We received some comments from council in June, so I'm guessing that this was bucked over to them probably either from April or May of this year for council to comment. That's my best guess.
Well, council comments is fine. We're talking about board approval of the manual that contains the rules.
Yeah, the manual contains the rules regarding, for lack of a better term, appropriate behavior at the amenities. All of
Okay.
our amenities.
Is that, and that manual's been, there has been an approval of a manual of that kind?
Yes.
When?
I don't remember when. I
Okay,
want to tell you, it was sometime between, if I had to guess, February, March of 2023 to sometime maybe April of 2020 or May of 2023.
okay. If I have gone back to January, maybe even prior to January, and gone through the minutes of the board meetings and the materials for the board meetings and find no such thing. Now, if I am wrong, I will be entirely glad to admit I am wrong. But my challenge to you is identify when that manual was approved. Now, we even, in the existing MO2, I don't believe the board has to approve them. The general manager, again, I'm going by my memory of M02, and that may not be very good as written M02. I don't think there's a requirement for the board to approve the rules, but they have to be made available to the board. They have to be posted in the area. If the GM changes one, he has to change his rules. He has to advise the board. But again, you have to find out. You don't have to do anything. I could be wrong. I find nothing that says, as was stated in the board motion for the second reading, that the board has approved that manual. That's the point I want to make.
Yeah,
My memory serves me that at some point discussion here, we were waiting, you had stated, Steve, that you had not heard from John about those manuals, and you were still waiting for the updates on that. My memory is, I couldn't tell you when we had that discussion at the moment, But I don't think we here at this committee ever got an update that, yes, those manuals were approved, because we were holding on to something about it because we couldn't finish something based on, we didn't know what the change was or.
Well, okay, let me backtrack. M02, with the work that the committee did, this committee, was basically laying out, for lack of a better term, what amenities would be governed and what the behavior would be that would trigger an action, and then who would take the action and what the charged party has in terms of a right to have a hearing, see whether or not that action is appropriate.
Right.
The discussion that took place, albeit informally, was that staff should prepare a manual governing behavior and what amenities we're talking about. But clearly, the intent was to govern all the amenities. Some amenities may have different rules than others, but the idea was to govern all the amenities and to appropriately describe the behavior that would trigger an action and then the opportunity for the party to get a hearing. At this point, I believe we are somewhere at addressing the issue of what would qualify as who has the right to initiate an action against an offending party, and what right the offending party has and the procedure the offending party would have to get a hearing. The manual, as I recall, governs who on staff has the authority to take certain actions and what amenities, what the behavior is that would trigger certain actions. Now, as I understand it, Jim's question or statement or concern is that he cannot find a record that the board ever approved the manual that was drafted by staff. My recollection is we did, but I can't tell you exactly when, and I will go back and try to find out.
Well,
But what it comes down to is the prior work done by this committee relating to M02 has, for lack of a better term, been fissured or broken off, so that staff took over part of the responsibility, and the rest of the responsibility still is subject to board approval, board consideration, which is what the first reading was meant to address, begin the process of at the July board meeting.
wasn't resolution to make sure we were in compliance with the Maryland
Yes.
Homeowner Act?
Yes.
And would that eliminate this resolution and it'd be buried in the manual then?
No.
That a
no,
proper hearing is conducted? Because
No.
that's where it's confusing.
The change in the statute
Yes.
that the legislature passed, I want to say now 2 sessions ago, was meant originally the concern, the way it came up here at Ocean Pines, was the legislature passed a change in the Homeowners Act, and the immediate concern was that affected how ARC operated in terms of giving a party who had been cited for one or more offenses under the guidelines the right to a hearing, who holds the hearing, and what's the procedure for getting a hearing. Ultimately, it became clear, and in part because people took a second reading of the statute, and the same issue of a hearing or an appeal came up in the 2 court decisions relating to Rick Farr's particular complaint regarding the election, and also the issue that took place at the yacht club with the former board member, Mr. Janusik. In both those cases, the court noted that Ocean Pines did not have an opportunity for either party who was affected by these actions to have a hearing, or there was no process in place for those parties to be heard by the board or some other appropriate body in Ocean Pines. So that's how we got from addressing the changes in the statute as it applied to ARC guidelines in N01 to all of our amenities in N02. So that's sort of where so that it's not as if there's an attempt to ignore the statute. It's an attempt to bring a policy to Ocean Pines that is consistent with the statute. Okay,
Okay.
does that help?
But
Well,
it's ever
We'll
been,
just add it to our agenda
Documented.
for the next meeting when you have an update, or if you want to send an email or something that says, if you found the date, or that information about.
About the manual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will check on that.
even if the manual includes that, what do we do with the resolution? Eliminate the resolution?
No.
No.
You need
No,
a
no,
resolution.
N0, whatever, ultimately, even if the manual exists, which
Right.
let's assume for a moment that it does. But
Okay.
even if the manual exists, we still need to have a policy and a procedure for an offending party to have the opportunity to be heard regarding whatever punishment would be imposed.
Right.
And that still needs to be addressed.
And that applies to anything ARP does or anything that we do within our amenities.
Where you.
Either way,
Where you lose any, I don't have the
No,
language, I don't
You don't
think I
need
have the
language.
language in front of me.
we know what, we all understand.
But anytime you lose a particular right or benefit in a homeowners association, you have you should be, under the statute, you should be granted an opportunity for a hearing before the governing body of that association.
Right.
So that's sort of where we are.
And I thought the last I heard is we're waiting for feedback from the attorney. So you're saying the feedback came and the manual was approved, but I
Well,
don't,
the feedback in the manual, the feedback from the attorney appears to be something different than what the manual said. And frankly, since I remember reading through Bruce Bright's comments, but that's
probably should be.
the idea that, generally what he's trying to do is sketch out and address what needs to be done under the statute.
Right.
So that's sort of where no, since it came up as a first reading, there was really not a whole lot of discussion about it. Doug did the first reading, then we went on to something else because it was the first reading.
Right.
So in theory, the deeper dive, the opportunity to amend, the corrections that need to be done would be done at the second reading. But since it was the last session of this board, when it comes back up at some point, it'll be the first reading again.
Right. So
Right.
basically it's an ongoing open item.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure it
Is there
doesn't
any
fall
further-
between the cracks.
Is there any further discussion on? All right. That is the last item on our agenda. The date of our next meeting we have as Friday, September 8th. We do not have a meeting scheduled in August simply because it is the transition month. The annual meeting is scheduled for Saturday, August 12th, at the community center building, in one of the bigger rooms, the acetate room, I believe, to accommodate the quorum that needs to be met. And it will also be a hybrid meeting as well with teams. I unfortunately cannot attend in person or virtually. I will be working at a pool in Ocean City. So I'm not sure how great my phone and Wi-Fi would be to try and join virtually. Plus I gotta be driving the Route 90 bridge at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think that's really gonna work. on a Saturday. So, if anyone else wants to attend, I will watch the replay once it's posted, to see what happens, at that meeting. And then as, Steve mentioned, once the election results are, determined and all of that at that meeting, at some point, then the new board will start scheduling their meetings. So tentatively, the dates I have here, we did them for the second Friday of the month, because that's what we've consistently been doing, which we may have to adjust depending on when the new board sets their meeting schedule, because we like to have our meetings at least 1 week prior to theirs.
Right.
So that if anything needs to be presented at the director's meeting, we have enough time to get that done. So tentatively right now, the remaining 2023 dates that I've got scheduled with Michelle and the office team here, then are the September 8th, October 13th, November 10th, and December 8th. Okay. We're holding off on doing the 2024 until we see whether or not we need to adjust any of these dates. But we will continue to hold our meetings, in a hybrid fashion, so that all of our committee members can attend and guests, whether virtually or in person. Does anybody have any questions or know of any reason that September 8th would not be good? I will be done my summer job after Labor Day.
It's my birthday.
Oh,
so
well,
Labor
then
Day's your
guess
birthday.
what? Will you be here in person?
I don't know yet. I can't remember if we're taking the family to West Virginia.
Well, if you're here in person, I will have special treats.
Oh, boy.
Okay. That means everybody has to show up to that meeting though, because I am not taking home all.
Well, but even if he's not here, can we get some?
Can't we celebrate?
We will celebrate for you.
Right, we can show you what you would have got had you attended.
And I said, actually, no. But yeah, so, if you let us know, if that date, is okay for you.
It's fine. It's just,
It's just-
I'll be here in person.
Okay, all right.
And
We've
happy
got
birthday,
time.
no matter what.
Yes, we've got time, but happy early birthday. Does anybody have any last comments?
Are you gonna have something posted to fill your vacancy? Because I'm good through October 13th, but if you do it on the 16th, I'm not here.
Yeah.
Other than as a guest. Jim, I
Yes,
can
I
join
will
you in
work
your
on
box then.
Do you need a break? You've had your break, you can come
Tag
back.
team.
Right, so we will.
I'm gonna need a bigger room.
Jim's got all the history.
I guess I will ask Linda, who makes the reports that they put out?
You are
I'll
talking about
send it, yes.
We should talk.
And then, if need be, we can, get them to include it when they talk about the upcoming meetings and whatever, and they'll say whatever committee has an opening. So we can, potentially add ours to that, but just not yet. So we've got a little bit of time.
Okay.
Cause then a couple of, I know mine, I'll renew mine, but mine is up in April of 2024. So a couple of us are in a cycle, so,
Yes.
but I'm completing my third year of my first term. So
Right,
I still
and-
have to-
And then you have a 2-year and a 1-year.
Is in
thought
his
this
second
way
term,
works.
correct,
Huh?
right.
Didn't we already do renew him?
What,
Keith Kaiser, didn't we renew him?
Jim?
I don't, no, Keith. He's not,
Oh, yeah, he's renewed.
yeah, that's not.
He renewed.
Yeah.
He's fine. And he got 1 more term after that one. He's in the second,
Because I have.
Okay.
but I'm on my extended,
Yeah, I know.
so there's not gonna be another extension.
Ends October
Okay, so
15th.
Go in. Go in.
Keith doesn't expire,
August 8th.
his
Is that
term
right?
doesn't
That's
expire.
what I said.
September, Keith.
Right.
And we'll still
I'll
do
look
it
it up.
till September.
They all passed the last board meeting.
and
Well,
probably
different times.
2025.
Okay.
Uh,
All right, So,
This one passed at the last.
so
board
really it's just
meeting.
about the
This would have been June.
upcoming most
July,
recent ones
July.
that we done first. So, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting
Yeah, July.
at 2:31 PM?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, third.
Okay, any further
Agreed.
discussion? All in favor of adjourning the meeting at 2:31 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Probably passed
Some are
early.
early.
Coming.